okay, I'm going to go climbing today. I'm going to put myself in a really dangerous situation. I'm going to push the envelopes of what I'm capable of, both physically and mentally. You've got to control the rush of adrenaline. You've got to control the fear. You've got to control everything which is screaming at you not to do it, and actively go out and seek to do it. Everest is unique, whether you like it or not.
For all its good and bad.
For all its good and bad. It's amazing how hard you fight when you think you are about to lose something.
We've had such a great response to the podcast, and so many of you have been in touch asking what you can do to help. It's really simple. Just follow, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That way we can reach more people, and that way we can celebrate these great minds that think differently. Our next guest has climbed Mount Everest 18 times. Yes, 18 times. Kenton Cool holds the world record for the most climbs by a non-Sherpa, and the journey has certainly had its ups and downs, from facing the possibility of never walking again to traumatic brain injuries and most recently a transient ischemic attack. We get inside Kenton's head to learn about resilience, mental strength, and the toll it takes conquering the world's highest mountain. Let's get into it. Let's hear how great minds think differently. Kenton, thanks so much for coming on the Hidden 20%. How's your brain today?
My brain?
Yeah.
It's a bit slow today.
Okay. And what does slow mean?
I don't know. I was thinking about this on the way in, because I was listening to the podcast and I kept losing track. Partly because I was driving to the station and so trying to concentrate on other things, but I kept losing my track on the podcast. So I kept having to take it back 15, 30 seconds, which is a little bit unusual. So I came to the conclusion actually this morning that my brain was slow today. And that's what I mean by that. I wasn't keeping up with the dialogue on the podcast I was listening to.
And does that happen often or not?
From time to time. Yeah, I quite often, I don't know if listeners or the audience do this. Maybe they're doing this with this very podcast, but I often have to rewind podcasts because my train of thought just, I don't keep up with it.
Okay. Because you think about something else or?
Yeah, I think I just lose myself. Okay. I don't know. I just go somewhere, which is probably really dangerous if you drive it.
So I thought I'd tell you my climbing story, Kenton.
Is it social climbing?
No, it's actual climbing. And it pales into absolute insignificance compared to, all the amazing things you've done. But about 12 years ago, I decided to climb Ben Nevis, which we're talking like less than 2,000 meters, right?
Yeah, but it's still the highest point in the UK.
Okay,
for those overseas audience who've never heard of Ben Nevis.
But I decided to climb it barefoot.
Interesting.
And I did actually do some sort of conditioning of my feet leading up to it. And my original plan, I was doing it for charity, but my original plan was I was going to do it 2 days in a row, which in hindsight was a really silly idea. But I did climb Ben Nevis barefoot and got back down. And then my feet swelled up so much.
Is this going up the tourist path?
Yes.
So it's probably...
Jaggy.
Yeah. Will you explain the barefoot bit?
My brother set up a charity when he left school, when he was 18. He basically finished school and went and started working in an orphanage in Peru.
Oh, wow.
He was only meant to be there a month, and he came back 7 months later, and he'd been living with the indigenous communities up in the Andes, the Quechua communities, and he'd learned that children there were walking 4 hours to school and 4 hours back.
Incredible. It's a bit like that in the Himalayas often.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was barefoot. And, these are young children, 4 hours to school, 4 hours back, with an education system that wasn't particularly relevant to their lives. And he, Fred, my youngest brother, he did an amazing job. He built all these halfway houses so the kids could kind of come and learn proper education during the week. And then they kind of go home at weekends or on Thursdays. And so I wanted to raise money for the charity. And I thought, well, I'm going I'm going to do it.
You're going to go barefoot.
Yeah,
like
I'm going to go barefoot.
Yeah, I mean, I trekked, when was it, 2017 or so, I trekked into Java, commonly known as Cast-Down's Pyramid in Papua New Guinea, which is one of the 7 summits. It's one of the highest points on the continent, and 6 or 7 day trek through the jungle to get to the mountain. Towards the end, over what's known as limestone karst. So very sharp. So I don't know if you've been to Yorkshire. That's where we get limestone karst, like top of Malham. Very sharp rock with what look like crevices or crevasses in between. It can be super, super sharp. And we walked with a local tribe, and they were all barefoot. And they walked through the jungle. They walked over the limestone karst. They walked over these. You mentioned the word jaggedy, horrendous limestone, like stone paths, and. I mean, so some of the children were like 7 or 8, and they all coveted, because we did it in wellies, 70, 80 kilometers in wellies. And they all wanted our welly boots. That was the one piece of equipment that we had that they wanted. They weren't interested in the phones, the cameras, the satellite communication equipment. It was the welly boots.
Yeah, incredible. I can imagine it, because it's not very fun on your feet.
No, I can't. No,
but that gave me. I guess I was thinking about it over the weekend, in preparation for meeting you, and I was just sort of thinking, God, the kind of, that was quite tough mentally to do. I mean, it's physically tough on my feet, but for a short amount of time, I had to go beyond just the pain and kind of. And do that, and so it just started me thinking, like, how do you prepare your brain? How prepared are you mentally for climbing Everest? How do you prepare your brain for something like that?
I think Everest is perhaps not the best example. Yeah, I mean, it's the highest mountain in the world. It's in the popular media at the moment because it's just coming to the end of Everest season, so you can pick up pretty much any paper and there is something about Everest right now, for better or for worse. But some of the more interesting things in terms of how you prepare yourself is perhaps some of the climbing which myself or my cohort or climbers do, which perhaps isn't commercial. Because I go to Everest in a commercial sense. I take paying clients to the mountain, so we have a big safety net. When we climb for ourselves, often that safety net is removed. And that's the really interesting thing, because you are deliberately putting yourself in a position, I think the terminology or the term is deep play, where you partake in an activity where the risk far outweighs any form of reward. And sometimes you get yourself into these situations and a mistake is going to be, at best, extremely painful. You're going to fall off. You're going to go clattering down the cliff or fall off the frozen waterfall or whatever it is that you're climbing. At best, you're going to hurt yourself, and at worst, you're going to end up in hospital or be dead.
Yeah.
So to try to get your head round volunteering, the conscious decision, okay, I'm going to go climbing today. I'm going to put myself in a really dangerous situation. I'm going to push the envelopes of what I'm capable of, both physically and mentally. You've got to control the rush of adrenaline. You've got to control the fear. You've got to control everything which is screaming at you not to do it, and actively go out and seek to do it. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you for saying that.
It makes very little sense. The bigger question is, fingers crossed, if the weather perks up, I'm going rock climbing tomorrow with my buddy Dave, and I will throw myself into a situation where if we screw up, we're going to hurt ourselves. I'm not being paid for that. In fact, I'm paying, because there's fuel to get there and there's a day out of my work schedule and everything else. I mean, where's the sense in that? And I think it's twofold. One, yes, there is that flush of endorphins of putting yourself in a risky situation whereby you walk away from it. The adrenaline is coursing through your veins. The whole thrill side of things. But then there is, and I know this from experience because I nearly lost it. There is the community as well, which I think is really important. And arguably, it gets more and more important the older I get, because community, I think, in today's society is being stripped away through. So, well, it's a different community, isn't it? The social media, the Instagram, the TikTok, whatever the platform may be, that's where we find community. But personally, I find it a very hollow community. But climbing has given me this community for the last, I've been climbing since I was 17, 18. And some of that community, some of those people within that community, I haven't seen for years. But I know I can go and knock on the door of a friend in Sheffield or somebody in Seattle or Kathmandu and walk into the house and say, I need help, or this has happened, or I've not seen you for ages, let's go for a beer, or let's go for dinner, or let's go climbing, or whatever it is. That community is so tight.
Amongst that community, what similarities are there in terms of mindset or outlook?
Well, I think traditionally climbers, there has been an anarchistic thread to climbing. I think Steve Jobs summed up climbing really well when he was talking about the outlier, the nonconformist, in that very famous speech that he had. That could be written about climbers, mountaineers. And I think any fringe sport, skateboarding, BMXing when it was niche, wingsuit flying, all the people that operate in those communities probably do think they're outliers. They're slightly anarchistic. They stretch the boundaries of rules and regulations and laws, and they live by their own set of moral codes. And that binds you very, very tightly. And people come and go in those communities, and they might go and get a proper job and conform for a while, but they've always got that thread there. They're always willing to push the boundary, to push back against what is considered to be a social norm.
Were you nonconformist as a child growing up?
Not really. I was quite the opposite. I'm super conservative, I think. I grew up in the outskirts of London. We didn't quite conform as a family. My father was a photographer, but unemployed for some of my childhood. We lived in a corner of a farm field, inside the M25, but we had no mains drainage. We had no central heating. We had a wood burning stove to heat the water. So none of that was conformist, but we lived in commuter belt. So all my friends and colleagues had, the Mercedes or the, whatever. Dad, I don't know what the dads did, but everybody had money. We didn't. But that didn't matter. And I suppose that's a community.
Did you conform?
Oh, massively.
Okay.
Oh my God. No, I was so, unlike my daughter, God forbid I'd ever be given a detention. My world would crumble around me. I used to be so good at adhering to rules. Then I went to university, saw something completely different. And that's when I started bending rules, I suppose. I'm not a law breaker as such, but I would certainly push the boundaries of what I consider to be acceptable. Why should you conform to a let's use the term rule rather than law, a rule laid down by somebody else that you perhaps don't really admire or hold in any sort of esteem? Why should they say, well, this is what you can do or this is what you can't do? And I think climbers have always still pushed that. I found some thread about cults over the weekend. As I was reading about cults and about how they set their own set of rules down and then live by those set of rules, which is perfectly acceptable to those who are within that cohort. I'm not saying that cults are a good thing, but we put that term cults.
But we've decided that the word cult is bad.
Yeah, is climbing a cult? Is skateboarding a cult? Well, it's kind of. Is wearing neon green socks. Is that a cult? Well, it was when I was growing up. We all had neon socks, and that was what we all did. Is that a cult?
And cult following, that term in the world of like brands and companies people is good. Yeah. That's a good thing. That's an aspirational thing.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's strange how we... And I think that's one of the issues with society. We're so quick to try to put people in a box that we understand or perhaps don't understand. But by putting that individual or individuals into the box, it helps us have a better comprehension of, well, they're good or they're bad or they're fringe. And I think society has always, to a certain extent, done that.
And how do you see that in terms of how people think differently and people's different brains?
Well, it doesn't allow free thought in many ways. Those who are pulling down the moral codes for society are saying, well, that's right or that's wrong. So I'm not religious, but you could look at the 10 Commandments, and okay, they are moral codes which the majority of us would like to think we lead our life by. Now, it's not exactly religious codes, are they? They're moral codes, and I think most of us would adhere to them, but not all of us would adhere to them. But if you don't adhere to them, then you're ostracized, and you think, well, okay, well, we're not gonna socialize with Ben because he doesn't follow God, or whatever it is, whatever your God is. God, I saw this is a tangent. I told you we'll go from tangents.
Yeah.
Remember Dave Allen,
yes,
the comedian?
Yes.
He always used to. I was watching a Dave Allen sketch only this weekend. He used to be my favorite comedian, and he always used to finish his sketches with, "And may your God be with you."
Your God, your interpretation.
Yeah, your interpretation of God in whatever manifestation that is.
So the Sherpa's goddess is Everest, correct?
Well, yes. I mean, Mother Goddess of the Earth, Sagamatha or Chumulunga, depending whether you're Tibetan or Nepalese.
Which means blue sky, the head in blue sky, I think I read.
Yeah, there's a number of interpretations. I mean, I'm not religious, but if I were, Buddhism. I mean, God, you got to embrace Buddhism. I mean, some of their stories are fantastic. When you go back far enough, so you got Mount Everest, and in 1856, that's when man decided that it was the highest mountain on the planet. It was Andrew Waugh, the then Surveyor General of the Great Indian Trigonomic Survey. They had measured Everest, and they worked out it was the highest mountain in the world. 1856. I mean, not that long ago, is it? But the term Chumulunga, the Tibetan term for Everest, goes back generations and generations and generations. Mother Goddess of the Earth. They knew all that time ago that there was something special about it. Anyway, so this llama flies over Everest. This is folklore, obviously. This llama flies over Everest, and sort of out of his or her, arms, they could shoot sunbeams. And what the local people did, they used to hang their washing on these sunbeams to dry their washing out.
Love it.
How cool is that?
How spiritual a place does Everest feel to you?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to go to Everest and do the trek and be surrounded by your Sherpa friends and not be touched by spirituality. I use the term spirituality rather than religion. First of all, my Sherpa friends, Dorji in particular, I mean, he's got a big shrine, in his house. He spends all summer during the monsoon learning scripture. He's fantastic. And so you do all the trek with Dorji, and you're visiting the various monasteries, and you're there at puja. I mean, I've got the string around my neck. It's blessed puja string to keep you safe. I mean, why am I wearing it if I'm not religious? So it's impossible not to be touched by spirituality when you're in Nepal and trekking to base camp. When you get to base camp, unfortunately, commercialism and the industry that is commercially climbing Everest has taken over. And to be honest, any form of connection is kind of squashed, for me at least, until I'm on the mountain. And then when you're on the mountain, there is this connection again, especially on summit day. I mean, I'm not religious, but I say a little prayer when leaving the top camp. And I mean, I've got bits of grain in my pocket of my jacket, blessed by the Lama, which I carry with me.
Most fatalities happen on the way down, correct?
Yeah, but generally.
And so there's
but that's mountaineering per se.
Okay.
And the reasons are, you get to the top and you perhaps mentally and physically check out, so you're not perhaps concentrating. But a more fundamental reason is, say you were, let's go back to Ben Nevis. So you're walking up at Ben Nevis, and I know on a tourist path, it's quite well constructed. But if you stubbed your toe on the way up, you would fall into the slope.
Yes.
Now think of you on the way down and you tripped over something. You fall out from the slope. So all of a sudden, the propensity to hurt yourself by falling out from the slope is I don't know, tenfold, plus you're tired. Maybe it's going dark, or if you're abseiling, i.e. sort of hanging onto the rope. If there's anything wrong in the system and something fails, you're dead because you're hanging on the rope. And that really only happens on the way down.
Was it 1996 when you had your big fall?
It was 96, yeah, which happens to coincide with the big Everest disaster that we all read about, 96.
Is that 96 as well?
That's 96 as well.
That was 8 fatalities?
11, I think.
Okay.
The whole into thin air.
Yes.
And
tell me about 1996 and
for
your
me,
fall.
I was in North Wales, and it was actually a week before, or about a week before. Yeah, it was a week before I was meant to be going to Pakistan on a big expedition. And it's a great example of letting others dictate what you think you should be doing. Because really, I just wanted to go to a cafe and drink tea. But my friends were like, no, we're off into the slate quarries, the disused slate quarries above Llanberis. And so I rather reluctantly go there. I did a warm-up climb with my then girlfriend, Carolyn. And I thought, okay, well, Richard's jumped on Ride the Wild Surf. I do the one next to her called Major Head Stress.
Is that what it was called?
Yeah, it was called Major Head Stress. And
wow.
I got about 15 feet up of it. And it was quite high, E5, and I broke a hold. So slate's quite friable. And I break a hold and I fall off. And I got no gear and I hit the floor. Not from that high. But the floor is covered in little shards of slate. So imagine at home, you slate on your roof. Imagine you put that all over your lawn and then jump on it. There's not going to be much give. So I landed hard on the floor and smashed both my heel bones, my calcaneum. Got up, did about 2 steps, collapsed again. And they were the last 2 steps I took for 3.5 months.
And they told you might not walk again?
I was told I would definitely not walk without a stick, modified shoes, definitely wouldn't run. And this segues into what we're talking about, community. When I asked when would I climb again, the consultant, my first consultant, said, well, he almost laughed at me and said, you're never going to be climbing again. So all of a sudden, my community, I thought, was about to be taken away. And it's amazing how hard you fight when you think you are about to lose something. I mean, I do a reasonable amount of keynote speaking, and I really only just cottoned on to this. You would think I would have learned this like 30 odd years ago when I had my accident. But it's almost like negative motivation, because you're going to fight way harder. If you think you are about to lose something, you're going to lose your house, or God forbid, you're going to lose your family. What would you do? I mean, you would go to the ends of the earth. Well, maybe not for the house, but for the family, you would. And so if you're about to lose your community, I mean, what do? Well, you fight back. And my number one aim was, okay, well, I need to walk, because if I can't walk, I can't climb. If I can't climb, I don't have a community. So I need to get back. And that was the driving force. So that sort of negative motivation.
Do you think you do your best work or your best thinking, therefore, when you are in that uncomfortable space?
Oh, when your back's against the wall. I mean, I've always come out fighting.
So 1996 was obviously a big moment, and for you, and a big opportunity for you to then find this fight to kind of go, actually, no, I am going to climb again, and I am going to sort of get back on the horse, as it were. We spoke a little bit beforehand, but tell me about the operation that you had when you were a child that affected your brain. And
the operation is called an intussussection. And I've got on my belly, I always say it's the reason why I can't get a six pack, because they basically cut me open. So I have, I don't know, it's probably like a 6-inch scar on my tummy, which I was 2 days old or 3 days old. And that was, I mean, it's amazing to think that was the size of my body, of my baby body. I mean, today, I suppose lawsuits will be flying around left, right, and center, but it is thought that during this, my time in the incubator, that oxygen was cut off for whatever reason to my brain. But when I was younger, it was, well, he seems, I mean, I couldn't speak properly. Spelling was absolutely atrocious, still is to a certain extent, which I think is linked to not being able to speak properly. At the time, dyslexia or various other learning difficulties perhaps were banding around, but ultimately I think it was down to the trauma from the operation and the lack of oxygen to the brain.
So I'm not an expert, Kenton, in the brain, but I have learned that there's this umbrella of neurodivergence that includes clinical neurodivergence. So that's more things like ADHD or autism. There's also acquired neurodivergence, which is a lot of what I think you're talking about in terms of having a traumatic brain injury. You're the first guest that we've had on who falls under an acquired brain injury, and the impact of that operation when you were younger on your brain and how it works.
I mean, when you're a child, you don't really notice. You just, I go to speech therapy twice a week. And the irony of it is, my childhood to a certain extent was perhaps dictated by, did they, through a mistake, cut oxygen off? Well, who cares? I'm alive. And I think my parents would take that any day. And nowadays on Everest, I starve my brain of oxygen, even with supplementary oxygen.
I mean, the irony is not lost. Could you explain the death zone, Kenton, and the impact on the brain?
The death zone is a part of the atmosphere where we climb into it. It's generally above 7,500 meters. So what's that, 23,000 feet, where there really isn't enough oxygen to sustain life. Hence the name death zone, because when the climber gets into the death zone, the body slowly starts shutting down, even with supplementary oxygen. It's a ticking time bomb. How long you have in the death zone, nobody really fully knows. And it varies from person to person. And the effects that being in that low oxygen environment has, I mean, we got to be careful because the amount of oxygen is actually the same. It's the air pressure, the air density, which means that we can't get enough oxygen coming into our bodies. And that lack of oxygen does a number of things. First and foremost, and people don't really realize this, it keeps us warm, keeps our extremities warm. Because of oxygen circulation in our blood. But the biggest thing is the effect on our brain, because we are starving our brains of oxygen. I volunteered with an ex-girlfriend who was doing a NASA-funded study for Brown University, and they were looking at the effects of starving your brain of oxygen on cognitive thought process. So we would carry, back in the day, it was Palm Pilots and flip charts, and we would call in on the radio back down to base camp, and there would be simple things like you would look at a picture. So it'd be a picture of a prince sat on a chair with a princess stood next to her, and then you flip it over, and then it would be the princess is stood next to and you basically just had to read out what you saw. And then the Palm Pilot, you would do pretty rudimentary logic puzzle type things. And the results are shocking. I mean,
But you did
ridiculous.
this.
We did it at like 7,500, 8,000 meters above sea level. And you see the results afterwards. And you're like, no, that can't be right. You're making that up. A really simple task and just ridiculously crap results. The sort of thing like a small child would be able to do. As soon as your brain is under pressure and you're trying to assimilate what it is in front of you, and you just can't do it. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's one thing is to get up, pull your boots on, put your crampons on, and follow a rope to the summit of Everest. I mean, that's relatively straightforward. It doesn't take, it's a fairly primal physical act. But then when you got to read out passages from a book, or you're missing words out, or you're missing lines out, it's ridiculous.
And are you aware of that?
No, not at all. I mean, you get back down and you're seeing the results and you're like, no, that can't be right. So lucid cognitive thought process is affected, which is ironic, seeing it's arguably one of the most dangerous environments in the world, and our ability to make rational decisions needs to be on point, and it's
massively inhibited.
It's eroded away, because of what it is that we're doing. We're starving our brains with oxygen.
Are you aware of the impact on your decision making, on your brain. You are very keen on making decisions via logic when you're on the mountain, and binary thinking, and removing any distractions, which I think, regardless of whether you're climbing Everest or just business day to day or personal life, there's a lot of
noise. I mean, it's like your notifications on your phone or whatever it is pops up at the corner of your laptop, and it's like, ring Michelle. And I mean, Christ, I mean, it's just noise.
Are you easily distracted?
Oh God, I'm like a squirrel. I'm awful. I'm absolutely awful.
I didn't wear my ice cream hat today.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's a good example. I mean, I'm constantly looking around. Oh, it's like a green light. I'm now thinking, well, is that green light? It's neon green. Is that their deliberate? I'm terrible. Especially if something is quite shiny or appears to be shiny. I'm like, well, what's that? I want to be part of that gang. Yeah, my wife calls it the squirrel moment.
Okay.
I get easily distracted.
And when you're on the mountain, you're in high stress, super focused, and I've heard you talk a lot about the stress and responsibility when it comes to the summit for your client and safety, and like, what is going through your head? What are you thinking about?
So, I mean, you leave your top camp, and I'm always intrinsically worried about numbers of people. Our weather forecasting is amazing, so yes, I am worried about the weather, but you got a pretty good grasp of what the weather's going to be. So I'm more worried about the people, because they're the uncontrollables. I always say, control what you can control really, really well, giving you enough bandwidth to deal with the uncontrollables, which is generally the other people. So I'm constantly borderline petrified about what everybody else is doing. So leaving the top camp, I'm like, okay, well, how many lights can I see? How many people are behind us? How many people are in front of us? Are we going to be able to overtake people? So I'm always worried about that. But what I think about for 15 to 18 hours, I mean, I get distracted by the view. Not this year because it was cloudy. I mean, the view's amazing. And then I think about, well, what's the family? Just your mind wanders. And that's where I talk about logic versus emotional decision making, because your mind is wandering here and there. You're trying to fill the void, the space. You're trying to take your mind off the stress, which is huge. And people often talk about, well, yeah, you must be worried about oxygen levels and how much oxygen you're burning through in your tank. I'm not worried about any of that, because we can micromanage that.
Okay.
We've got that covered. That's something we can control.
Because you can measure it.
We can measure it, yeah. You can look at the little dial on the top, and you've got, the phenomenal Sherpa team are carrying spare cylinders, and they're depositing cylinders, and you got all this shenanigans going on. And we've had the hiccup with Ben Fogel back in 2018 when we had the regulators fail, and we worked through that, and that sort of thing only happens once in a lifetime. So I'm not really worried about that. But what I feel is like 18 hours worth, I don't know. It's a bit like a dream. It's all a bit dreamy in a good way.
It sounds very surreal.
It's surreal in many ways, because you're dealing with the anxiety. You're looking after someone's dreams and ambitions. You're plodding to the highest point in the world. You're starving your brain of oxygen. It is one of the most majestic things you're ever going to do, and ultimately is utterly pointless. But it is, isn't it? I mean, why do we have
But not
this?
to you.
Well, I keep coming back, though, unfortunately, to me, it is work. So it's not pointless, because that's the way I pay the mortgage. But at the same time, I could probably, if I really wanted to, sack off being an Everest guide and get a leadership role with, making it up, I don't know, Procter & Gamble or Deloitte or whoever as like a global leadership ambassador, and probably get paid 5 times what I get paid going up and down Everest. But I do love it. I still go back because I do enjoy it. Let's put the negative slant onto it. I was leaving Everest this year, and every time I leave, I'm like, well, am I coming back? And I run this through my mind. I'm like, okay, well, this is the last time I'm going to come here as a climber. Okay, so what does it feel like? Well, it feels great, But it's sad because this is the last time I'm going to be like leaving base camp in the way that with the memories. And so what is it I'm going to miss? And it's really hard to put your finger on it. It's more than, and I can't just say three things. Yes, it's my Sherpa friends. Of course I'm going to miss them. But, I like waking up in the morning and going into the Sherpa. So this is how bad Everest is. So you have the client's tent or tents for breakfast and dinner and evening meals, which are nicely heated. There's an 11,000 euro espresso machine that Lucas has there, Lucas Furkenbach. Yeah, 11,000 euros it cost. The coffee's pretty damn good. Yeah, and it's got like carpet on the floor, and it's heated and. But I normally walk straight past that and go and sit down with the Sherpas in their tent, which has no carpet, it has no heater, and they've got their own kitchen, which is doling out dal bhat, which is a local food, which I love. And then maybe sampa for breakfast, which I'm less keen on. And I'll go and have my cup of tea with them. And I just sit down, and there's a complete language barrier. Most Sherpas speak pretty good English, but I can't speak a word of Nepalese. I mean, more for me. But there's just this bond. There's this community again, and you're there, and they love it, and I love it. And you start forming those relationships. That's what I miss. I miss that bonding, that ability to sort of almost subconsciously have a connection with these guys that are working their asses off for you in a dangerous environment. They would do anything for you. Yes, okay, you pay them and there is summit bonuses and there's all these sorts of things. But it's more than that. That's what I will miss.
Camaraderie, I mean.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I will miss from Everest. And you could get it on other mountains, I know that. And I work in the European Alps and I see my other guide friends, but it's not quite the same. Everest is unique, whether you like it or not.
For all its good and bad.
For all its good and bad.
Tell me 3 things you love about your brain.
I love its randomness. It's such an amazing thing that I know so little about. And the fact that I am a squirrel and I could be having a conversation and all of a sudden see something and it completely captivates me. And my brain wants to know what it is and what's it doing and why is it there? So, I love that side of things. I love its ability to recall information. I mean, Christ. I mean, I know we've all got computers and I know we've got phones and I know we've got diaries and things like that, but there is nothing better, I don't think. I just think it's incredible. Why does the brain do that? Why does it? You don't even consciously think about it, do you? But it picks up these random bits of information, decides it's important, so we'll hang on to it. And then the ability to regurgitate it sometime in the future is astounding.
Do you think you can improve that, train that, make memory better?
I mean, I'm not a brain aficionado, but of course you can. I mean, you can train your brain to do all sorts of things in the same way that you can train your body. Third thing, the ability to solve problems. Our ability of our brains to problem solve. Like a climbing problem, you're climbing and you're going up and part of it is physical, but part of it is mental. And you see the problem and you have to unlock that problem by, okay, well, this is what I need to do. I need to move up in a way. I need to get my feet high. I need to get my hand there. And then I need to move across the. Now, we talk about AI and we talk about, chat GTP or GT, whatever it's called. But our brains are still such an amazing organism that I think way too many of myself included just take for granted.
Do you like your brain?
Oh, I love my brain. I would like it to be a bit more organized. I would like it to lose things less. I mean, this is classic me. So I always ring my wife from the top with a sat phone. And this year I open up said bag and there's no sat phone. And what have I done with a sat phone? But I get to Everest Base Camp and I'm undoing my, I use heated footbeds in my climbing boots. I'm undoing my heated footbed and there's my sat phone in my heated footbed bag. What's it doing in there? I love my brain and I hate it in the same way. What was my brain thinking of putting a sat phone, not in its bag, but in its heated footbed bag? Makes no sense. So I love my brain. At the same time, I wish it would just work with me a little bit more sometimes. Or remember those things. No, I'm terrible for that sort of thing. Don't even ask me about my wallet. I lose my wallet so regularly. But I think subconsciously because then you have the joy of finding it. I find my wallet 3 times a day. It brings such joy to your life. But I mean, short-term memory, we talked about this, didn't we, beforehand, a little while ago. I mean, I think short-term memory is affected, or mine is, it's not simply old age. People be going, well, you're 51, of course your mind's going. Time at altitude. I mean, I think you starve your brain. Short-term memory does seem to be one of those things which disappears. But honestly, the joy of finding your wallet 3 times a day, it's fabulous. You should try it.
See, I never lose anything.
Yeah, but I could hide your wallet for you. You'd love it. Trust me.
My kids are can be really lazy because I have this memory where I can remember where everything is, and it's sort of photographic, I guess, in a sense. They never go and look for things on their own. They just ask me. But then where's the sieve?
Yeah,
and I can say it's in the second drawer. Yeah.
But then I mean that's a fascinating thing, isn't it? I mean, how we all have a brain, but our brains just work in such different ways. I mean, my wife virtually has a photographic memory. She can remember the number of the chairlift that we were on when this particular photograph was taken. You're like, well, why would you even want to remember that? And how can you remember that? Yeah, my memory will remember, oh yeah, well, it was, I don't know, this 6 Panzer Grenadiers, launched into battle. I mean, what's the point of remembering that?
But that sounds like military history is a topic of high interest for you and high passion.
Yeah, if I went back to university, it would be history.
And therefore, your brain has decided that you're going to hold on to all of that because it really means something to you.
Yeah, 100%.
Not to everyone else.
But how do you explain the sieve then for you?
Because I see it.
Visualization.
Yeah, I have a picture. I can tell you what's in the drawer that everything gets blooming shoved into.
Yeah, everybody has a drawer like that, don't they?
Cooks matches in there.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, and there's a yellow folder that's got the passports in and it's on the left hand. Like I can, because I
looked
in it yesterday.
You want to keep those in a safe. So mine's currently on the kitchen side. It's like, oh my God, I need to put that away somewhere. I mean, I lose my passport. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, oh God, I lose stuff so much. You should try that. Maybe I should hide your wallet.
Yeah, okay.
But then I just forget where I hid it for you.
Exactly. That's the problem.
But it brings joy. I mean, maybe your brain's doing it deliberately because it wants the thrill of
finding
can't find it and then finding it, and then you feel smug because you have found it, and your wife's going, oh, "Where's your bloody wallet?" And then when you do find it, like, aha! I knew where it was all along.
So, but your year, Kenton, I guess you climbed Everest when first 2004.
Yeah, 2004.
So 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And 18 times. So basically, let's call it every year.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which are these, high intensity moments in a year with then, the recovery and the crash and the kind of come down from such an epic thing. Yet you sound like you enjoy the thrills, you enjoy kind of taking calculated risks and the kind of sense of adventure. What do you do for the rest of the time? What do you do for the rest of the year?
Well, I struggle in the office. So the office is at home. So, I mean, I co-run. So I've got my guiding, which I do. I got the whole keynote speaking thing. But I co-founded and run a performance coaching company in Cool company with my wife. And the office is at home. And I really struggle with that. I mean, the squirrel inside me is constantly looking out the window thinking, well, it's a nice day. I should be climbing or should be out for a run or should be doing anything but sat at a desk. I mean, I struggle with the whole desk thing. But it's all sorts of things. I'm off to Alaska in late June. I'm working in the European Alps as a mountain guide. I've got a speaking tour because I do sort of stage tours, which is sort of anecdotally based. So most of October, I'm on the road. I'll be back in the Alps in August into September. predominantly on the Matterhorn. All my clients seem to want to climb the Matterhorn this year. I'm back to Nepal with a trek, and then I'm climbing Amadablam in November. So it's a constant drip feed of endorphins.
Adventure.
Yes. Endorphins. There's no one particular. I mean, obviously, Summit Day on Everest is right up there, but I get as much joy from, a day's rock climbing in, say, Cheddar Gorge or Avon Gorge or wherever I may be, to climbing the Matterhorn, to climbing Everest. It doesn't really matter. It could be Ben Nevis, it could be Scarfell, it could be Penny Fan in the Brecon Beacons. It doesn't really matter to me whether it's the highest mountain in the world or whether it's my local hill, like May Hill in the Cotswolds. It's all beautiful, and it's meaningful to me, if not everybody else. I mean, I don't care if people on social media say, oh yeah, bravo, you just climbed Everest for the 18th time, or whether I climb May Hill with the dog, because that's what I want to do. I don't need the applause. I'm quite content in my own brain doing what I do. I've learned that the hard way. It doesn't matter what others think. It doesn't matter what others say. And it's really a hard thing to get your head around, but we should do it for our own self-satisfaction, regardless of... I mean, for years, I was the yes man. I would just conform and say, oh, well, Kenton's doing another expedition. Well, of course Kenton's doing another expedition, because that's what he does. He's a yes man. He doesn't want to let people down. And then after a while, I'm like, well, yeah, I love them, but let's start doing things because that's what I think I should do, not what I think others think that I should do. I'm not an expert. A master
of the kind of, I guess, the ins and the outs of ABI, acquired brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, and neurodivergence. But I do know that what I've read is that the impact of a traumatic brain injury, for example, and these acquired neurodivergences can actually mirror a lot of the characteristics, challenges, traits, skills that happen with clinical neurodivergence. So sensory issues, communication issues, challenges with socializing and social settings. And I just wondered if any of what I've just said sort of chimes and resonates with you.
I mean, it resonates to an extent whereby, not so much on the sensory side of things, there's certain things have to be just so. Otherwise, I just feel a little bit unbalanced. And it could be as simple as the heater in the car. Can't be on 19.5. Can't be on 19.
Okay.
It's got to be even numbers. And if it's not even numbers, what are we looking at?
18 is the temperature of this room.
I mean, okay, my world's not going to come crashing down, but I will keep glancing at the heater.
Okay.
We need to change that to 20 or 22 or whatever it may be.
What about your routine?
So...
Do you like routine?
Yeah, on certain things. So, I'm not methodical in the way that I approach a climb. I'm not methodical in, I don't need to have the same clothing, or I don't need to put my left boot on before my right boot. But there's definitely processes which I feel that I need to go down. So I've tried to be more organized. And as I've got more organized, I realized that there are processes that I like to try to put in place.
That help.
That help. Yeah, that help. And it's a cliche, but but the numbers, I'm not going to crash a car if it's a 19.5, but it definitely is a distraction.
But it sounds like you're more aware of your brain.
Oh, massively. I'm more aware of my brain. We all are, and I put myself definitely in this category. We're all deeply flawed, and we're all struggling with our own struggles, whatever they may be. And there's definitely ways that we can help ourselves on our journey, and that's self-investment. And to start down that avenue, we need to have a better understanding about ourselves. And this is only, for me, really only come in the last 5, 8, 10 years max.
Yeah, and understanding your brain is part of that, right?
Hugely, and what's important to you.
Yeah.
Selfishly is more about perhaps me, and that comes from my understanding of our brain, of my brain, of what works for that brain, what fires that brain, what it likes, what it doesn't like, what it needs, what it doesn't need. Binary thinking again. Try and cut the noise out a little bit.
And therefore, what advice would you give to people listening or watching in terms of, mental strength, improving the functionality of your brain so that you can, I guess, push yourself further?
Well, first and foremost, I try to change like motivation into habit, which comes from doing things repetitively. I think for me, at least, that's a really important thing. I mean, I'm struggling with that right now. So I'm back from Everest, I don't know, 8-10 days. I'm trying to get back into fitness. I'm trying to, I think I'm motivated, but, I like training in the mornings. I get up in the mornings and I'm like, I can't be arsed, or I don't want to get up with a 6 in front of the clock or 5 in front of the clock or whether to do an hour's training before taking the children to school or whatever it may be. But that's exactly what I need to do. And once I make it a habit, it's easy. So that's one thing which I struggle with, and I'm struggling with right now, trying to change that motivation into habit. But the other thing is keep working the brain. And I've been through big, long periods of time when I've not worked my brain. And it gets like any other muscle to a certain extent. It gets lazy. Now, it needs to be worked. It needs to be, could be playing chess, or it could be, we play quite a lot of cards at home, or we play board games, anything like that will do. It doesn't need to be, your head in a textbook learning about, theory of relativity or whatever it may be. It can be, playing games with the children or whatever,
just keeping it active.
Keep it active, keep working it, keep it on its toes.
Yeah, keep it guessing. We asked you to bring an object, Kenton, a neurospicy contribution, as it were. What did you bring us? This
is Stripey Mouse. So if you're not watching, Stripey Mouse is a stuffed toy, and he is a mouse. You can tell he's a mouse because he's about 1.5 feet long with extremely long limbs. And no one's quite sure where Stripey Mouse came from, but he appeared when I was in an incubator. So Stripey Mouse is 51 years old, and he's got, I think it's something like 11, 10, 9 Everest summits. So it always used to be strapped to the back of my rucksack. He has been re-knitted by my mother many, many years ago. She's not with us anymore. But and then this rather fetching morning suit was actually for my wedding back in 2008. Stripey Mouse used to represent escapism for me when things were really bad. When I say really bad, you're being on a bivouac somewhere and you're crapping yourself and you're worried about how the climb's going to go the next day, or you're scared, and I used to be able to snuggle with Stripey Mouse because he used to be in my sleeping bag, and you kind of snuggle and you can close your eyes and you can be anywhere. You can trick your brain through sort of tactile resonance or whatever the word is. And I would be able to trick my brain with Stripey, and I just would somehow know that everything was going to be okay. So that's why I brought Stripey along. And he's not had an outing for a while. And I thought he might want to, I don't know,
stay in London.
Come to London to see the Queen or see the King or whatever it is these days, because he's been apprehended by my daughter. But he is the world's foremost mountaineering mouse.
Thank you so much for bringing that, Kenton. I'm so struck by the fact that Mouse has been in an incubator with you and up Everest, and he's green.
I did think that when I came in. I mean, even the yellowy bit kind of works, and the green bit.
He's a good fit.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Kenton. Been so good talking to you, and I love your squirrel brain. It's brilliant. Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Because I'm autistic, I think differently. And back in 2015, I wanted people to drink differently. So I created Seedlip, the world's first distilled non-alcoholic spirits. I took Seedlip from my kitchen to 35 countries and the world's best bars, restaurants, and retailers. And we did it in 3.5 years. It was wild. They're delicious. They're intriguing. They're these distilled botanical blends you can just mix with tonic or have in a cocktail. You really don't need another sickly, horrible mocktail. Check us out on sealipdrinks.com or Amazon and let me know what you think.